Doing, but okay, I'm gonna try that again because the audio was all messed up. So, 3, 2, 1. We are live here in the AFS Network, live on YouTube, live on Facebook. Every now and then we'll do this live so you guys can see it. And if you like what you're seeing, just share it with your friends. Go to YouTube and subscribe because we'd be putting good content in there and lots of good things happening in the bodybuilding world, in the wrestling world, and everybody, every angle that we can cover. We love these guys because in the bodybuilding industry, they just keep getting content for us, and it's really, really cool that we keep expanding on it. Last week we talked about the importance of trash talk, and with Sergio Oliva, Kevin Jordan, and this week, we'll have a little bit more controversy with Jeremy Buendia and Dexter Baye Jackson and everybody else and their mom. But without further ado, I'm going to let David say hi because he's been traveling all over the world. He's been a little bit under the weather, but he's here. And like we promised, David Baye is here, and we're bringing you this is not from a phone. This is not like one of those little shows that you see on your phone. This is like a real HD show. So, Dave, what's up?
Yeah, you're not kidding, man. I've been a little bit under the weather. I was in Chicago last weekend, Houston 2 weeks ago. Omaha 2 weeks ago, Houston 3 weeks ago. So I've been traveling a little bit under the weather late last week. But I am alive. A good weekend in the bodybuilding and fitness world. We had the Europa down in Dallas. Always a good production there by Edinburgh Priso and Scott Templeton. We had 212 bodybuilding and figure and wheelchair bodybuilding. Then also we had the NPC Junior Nationals in Chicago. As always, I was down there doing a little bit of coverage for Flex Magazine and Flex Online. And then, as you had alluded to, no shortage of drama just coming up within the last 2 days or so between Jeremy Buendia and just about every pro bodybuilder. So we'll get to that just a little bit later, but definitely some points of controversy, but nothing that we're going to shy away from. And if nothing else, it gives us something to talk about. So no, it was interesting, but again, we'll get to that in a little bit. So.
Yeah, so some good news from all over the world and some sad news. I got a few people wanting to get our own opinion of sad passing away of Leon White, better known as Big Van Vader, as we all know, one of the best big guys in the wrestling industry. Here we have it, WWE posted it, but it's been all over. And if you don't know Big Van Vader from the 90s, he was very imposing. Before all these strongmen, which we know now, like Braun Strowman and all these guys, which, believe it or not, they were hired at the Arnold Classic. Right now, Vader was one of these guys that was like 380, 350 at his lowest, 350, and even in Japan and all over the world, even in Puerto Rico, I remember, he could do a moonsault and he could intimidate people. This is way before all the big guys, because he could be tall, but Vader was a real mass monster in a strongman style, pretty much. So I'm just gonna get David's quick thoughts on what he remembers about Big Van Vader in the early 90s.
He was an athletic guy. I mean, that was the thing. You see these some of these wrestlers, and especially when we talk about guys in like the 70s and 80s, we know that some of the wrestling styles or the moves they were doing weren't all that intricate. But for being as big as he was, he's really athletic. Kind of reminds me of an offensive lineman in the NFL. You get these guys that are well over 300 pounds that you think are going to be slow and a little bit clumsy, and they're really good athletes. And so he was, like you said, he was a huge dude with a personality to match his frame. Wasn't afraid to go up on the top rope. It was crazy seeing somebody as big as him do some of the stuff that he did. It's my understanding, I think he was in his 60s and stuff. So from what I had heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, he had some heart problems. But, being in his 60s and being that he carried around as much weight as he did, and the wrestling, and who knows whether there was any sort of the recreational stuff that oftentimes went along with the WWE. So not shocking, I would say, given his age and his weight, but a loss for the wrestling community nonetheless.
Yeah, I remember stories, because this is all about stories, and I remember back in the day they were really heavy into, like, after the shows, going and drinking and having some good fun. Like, it was him, it was Flair, it was Sting, it was all the guys from the 90s, like Luger was in there too. And I think his kid right now, it runs his Twitter and everything. And there's a good documentary on Leon White, better known as Big Van Vader, where he's pledging basically for his life and telling the world his experience on wrestling and everything. But a very sad day for all the people that love wrestling, and may he rest in peace, the Big Van Vader with the Vader bomb straight from the heavens. So now we're gonna jump in to the Dallas Europa. It's a big show. Hey, for those who don't know, I streamed that show, 3-camera shoot, all by myself. I just needed to point that out there, just in case
we'd like to
seem to forget. We're here.
Like to get back
the 212 was happening. And a guy by the name of Mr. Cambronero won. He's won in Puerto Rico before. What do you think about this show, David? Give me your quick thoughts. Come on.
Well, I thought it was a good show. Not the deepest 212 lineup. We didn't see any of your big heavy hitters from the Olympia or the Arnold, as far as, your Jose Raymonds, your Flex Lewis, your Derek Lunsford, Aman Ashkanini. But it was a good lineup, and it was a chance for us to see some of the 212 competitors that we haven't seen so far this year, a couple guys that we have seen so far this year. But, here we see the first call out. You see Alex Cambronero there in the middle next to Jacob Wilson, your heavyweight winner from last year's USA's, Silvio Samuel, John Jewett, Bola Ojex, and again Craig Richardson. So it was a good win for Alex. He's got his Olympia qualification. I don't know if it's the sharpest that I've ever seen Alex. I looked at a pretty good handful of pictures, and the aesthetics are there, as we always see with Alex, and his lines are going to carry him through a lot of shows. And being that it wasn't as deep of a lineup as we've seen in some of the 212 shows, he was able to walk away with that victory. As far as once he gets into deeper waters, he's a guy that can definitely win. And in this shot, that ab shot, his conditioning looks fantastic. I think we've got some back shots that, you might be able to throw up. And you can see there, not quite the crisp detail that we're used to seeing from Alex. But it's early on in the season. Yeah, there usually we see a little bit more detail in the rear delts, and especially in the hamstrings and the glutes from Alex. But again, it was good enough to get the win here. And he's definitely a guy that's, going to have some momentum going into the remainder of the year, and especially into the Olympia. I know we've seen him compete down in Tampa a handful of times. I haven't had a chance to speak with him, but so I don't know what his game plan is. But again, nevertheless, he did what he needed to win. Man, walks away with an Olympia qualification, so we'll definitely see him on stage there. In the runner-up spot, Craig Richardson. This dude has been around forever and just continues to impress. So I've always been a fan of Craig Richardson. He was a guy that was doing very well in the open division, pretty close to the weight he's at right now. There we can see Craig hitting a most muscular. And, in certain shots, he looks like, you can tell that he's aging a little bit. And then he's got some shots like this where he looks like a fresh young bodybuilder. And so I was really impressed with Craig. He's one of those guys where he's always kind of in that top 5 mix as long as he's on. I'd like to see him get a win and get his spot on the Olympia stage, being an older guy who I'm guessing is in, what could be the last few years of his career. But definitely a good showing for Craig, and he walks away with a second-place finish. Jacob Wilson in third place, that was a good showing for Jacob. Those of you who don't remember, Jacob won the heavyweights at last year's USA, so he was a little bit overshadowed by Derek Lunsford. He actually went into the Tampa show a week later. So Jacob and Derek both went to Tampa last year and placed 1 and 2. So Derek, again, winning that Tampa Pro last year, but he really overshadowed Jacob, unfortunately. If somebody comes off the USAs with getting their pro card at the USAs and goes into a pro show a week later, and take second place, that's a big deal. So unfortunately, Jacob Wilson was in the shadow of Derek Lunsford a little bit, so he flew a little bit under the radar. But he comes out. Here you can see him in the most muscular, comparing well, not quite the shape or fullness of Alex or Craig, but a good showing for him, and he brought really good conditioning. I don't think these pictures quite do a fair job of showing just how detailed Jacob could get. We also see Silvio Samuel on stage there. Silvio back in that top 5 spot. So here's a guy who was MIA for quite a few years, getting back on the IFBB stage, doing all right. But for him to get back into the top 5, it was a good placing for him. So, like I said, he's definitely not the bodybuilder that he was, before he disappeared from the scene. But coming back out and placing top 5 at a show like Europa, he's got to be satisfied with that. And he's an older guy. I want to say he's in his late 40s or even his early 50s. But, he's been around for a while. So given his age in this lineup, he did pretty good. Then rounding out the top 5, we had John Jewett. So we saw John a little bit earlier this year in New York. Now, John, I believe, did the Phoenix Europa as his pro debut last year, placed top 5. Everybody was expecting very big things from John. So we saw him come out in New York earlier on this year, just off base for what we had expected from John as far as conditioning. He definitely made improvements coming into this Europa. Again, a lot of the progress pictures that we saw of John on his Instagram page and on social media showed markedly improved conditioning from New York. John had posted that he felt that this was his best show to date. I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, just from a media standpoint. Obviously, John knows his body better than anybody else. So if he says that, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But when I think of John Jewett, I keep going back to both of his showings at the USA's as a middleweight and as a heavyweight, and the conditioning that he brought, both as a middleweight and as a heavyweight, was really next level. And when I look at this lineup here, Alex at his best, I think still beats John at his best, but I think you take John as is from the 2016 USA's, the 2015 USA's. No, Cody won the 2015. John won the 2016. I'm getting my years mixed up. You take John as he was when he won the heavyweights and you throw him in this lineup, I think John wins here. So, overall, John might have felt like it was his best package, and obviously I wasn't there, so I can't judge completely on photographs or videos that you see. But John's kind of, he's going to be one of these guys who's a victim of his own success. And what I mean by that is John set the bar so high for himself as far as conditioning that he's not always, I think, going to be compared to the guys he's next to, but compared to former versions of himself. And this is something that we've talked about on a very regular basis. Guys who become known for extreme conditioning set a bar for themselves that the judges and the fans expect them to reach every time. Somebody like Dexter Jackson, if Dexter Jackson's 5% off, he's still better than almost every other bodybuilder on this planet. People are going to be like, oh, Dexter's off. So, again, John needs to... John needs to do what John feels like he needs to do at the end of the day. I'll make that clear. And obviously this is only, I think, his 3rd or 4th pro show. So being in the top 5, a great accomplishment. So I don't want to take anything away from him. I just do want to make the point that I think John, looking the way he did when he won the USA's, wins this show, or at very minimum is a very close runner-up to Alex Cambronero. So a good show for everybody all around.
Let me cut you off right there real quick, because I need to ask you this question. And this is a question that I've been having since 2015, I want to say. Considering what we saw in this show, and we all know that Alex has a great shape. He looks like a real athlete. He's one of those guys that you see like regular clothing and you would never really realize until he takes it out and just starts popping. His front double, it's like huge flaring lats and stuff. But I gotta ask you, David, in all honesty, because that's what we're here for honesty, does it bother you this much, this whole like head tilt? Does it bother you to the point that you would mark a guy down Does it
No.
bother you that, I mean, the guy has a legit condition. I mean, he had a car accident, I believe, and this has been happening like for 2, 3, almost 4 years, and it's constant. It happens all the time. Does it bother you?
No. You know, the first couple times I saw him, I just wasn't sure why he was doing it, and I didn't know if it was just kind of a quirk that he had with his posing. You know, you see some people make interesting faces, or some people, you know, they're breathing out real hard, or you know, doing stuff like that. So I think it was in San Antonio in 2015. I actually asked him and his wife Maggie. I said, you know, I don't mean to be rude, but, you know, do you mind, you know, explaining to me? And basically what they had explained is that Alex had a motocross accident a number of years ago, where he damaged, I believe he damaged an optical nerve. And so when his head is straight up and down, he has a little bit of blurred vision. So if he tilts it just to his right, his vision is a little bit clearer. And so when we see him tilting his head in those poses, that is so he can see a little bit clearer. Now, he's talked about having surgery done, but given that it's eye surgery and there's optical nerves involved, not only is it a very expensive surgery, but it's my understanding that is a risky surgery. And so it's a risk reward, you know, and just a personal choice. As far as does that affect his placing, I don't think so at all. You know, I think it's a minor tilt of his head. I think anybody who's on the judging panel and in the media, most of us know his story and about his motorcycle accident. So it, you know, like I said, the first couple times I saw him, I was like, oh, why is he tilting his head like that? And as soon as you hear the story behind it and you understand why he is doing what he's doing, then no, it doesn't bother me at all. And again, I don't, you know, this is bodybuilding. We're talking physiques here and muscularity and conditioning and aesthetics. And he's got all those things. So a slight head tilt, I don't see that. I don't find that to be distracting at all.
Yeah, I agree. I know it's still a bodybuilding show. You're not gonna judge. I mean, presentation does work, but it's just a little head tilt, and I'm sure he's gonna get it fixed. So speaking of Alex, on this whole mix-up and now winning the show, where does Alex, you know, fit in the Olympia compared to, you know, obviously we're gonna talk about Flex, Lunsford, which has been all over social media. Where does Alex fit in?
Oh, where does Alex fit in at the Olympia? That's a good question. You know, when we look at the top five guys that we can imagine being in the top five, Flex Lewis, David Henry, Ahmad Ashkanini, Derek Lunsford, Jose Raymond. I don't know that Alex is carrying the mass to be in that top five discussion. You know, and I don't know that he wants to put on that kind of mass. He's very proud of his aesthetics. I think Alex, given superior conditioning, is definitely a top 10 guy. You know, if we start looking outside that top five, you got guys like Ricardo Correa. You know, there's all kinds of guys, and Ricardo comes to mind. But you know, guys like Alex. You know, there's a handful of really good bodybuilders that can sneak into that top 10, and I think Alex is in that conversation. So unless he were to show up at 0% body fat and just blow everybody away with some sort of just razor sharp conditioning, I don't know that I am gonna say that I can see him in the top five. But he can definitely be a top 10 guy. And when you're talking about you know, the entire world, top 10, that's not too shabby. But he's going to need to bring sharper conditioning. You know, the 212 division has been known for its conditioning over the past handful of years, and since its inception, actually. We've talked consistently about how the 212 guys tend to bring better conditioning than some of the open guys because they have to. And on the biggest stage there is, which is the Olympia, if Alex does want to crack that top 10, he's going to have to improve on that conditioning a little bit. But we've seen him, you know, better before, so I don't have any reason to doubt that, you know, that he can't get there again.
Yeah, we were talking about, you know, it's just a matter of who he's gonna be facing at the Olympia. And one guy that I think we haven't talked enough about in this show, and you know, it's the gnarly muscle of Ahmed Ashkanani from the Camel Crew. Like, you know, when you put a guy like him next to Alex, it's totally, you know, apples and oranges. But
absolutely,
without, you know, covering that, I think David answered the question pretty dead on. I think we have some wheelchair guys here, and Harold Kelly came in again. He's like the Ronnie Coleman of the wheelchair division. He looked absolutely insane.
Yeah, Harold. It's gonna be a little while before somebody comes along and takes over Harold's spot as the king of that wheelchair bodybuilding. He's now a 3-time Arnold Classic champion, and there's some really good wheelchair bodybuilders that we see coming up. But right now, Harold has been dominant. Just a ton of muscle, really great proportions in his upper body there. Huge arms, big lats. He presents very well. So as far as anybody beating Harold Kelly in the near future, I don't see it happening. So congrats to Harold Kelly. Last 2-3 years, I don't know that he's placed anything other than the first place spot at any of the shows he's done. So a big congratulations to Harold, and another very well-deserved win. And we also had our figure champion, Martina Yabakova. Certainly don't want to leave her out, so congratulations to Martina. Always a good lineup with the figure competitors down at the Europa, so congratulations to her. As far as other competitions, as we had discussed earlier on in the show, I was at Junior Nationals this last weekend, and definitely a fun weekend in Chicago. It always is for those of you guys who make your way down or up or wherever you're coming from to Chicago. It's a good weekend. The show is right there in one of the ballrooms at the hotel, so it's a really convenient setup for the athletes and the media and everybody attending. But it was a good weekend, so a little light on numbers in bodybuilding, and we'll touch on that a little bit. But I'd like to talk a little bit about your bodybuilding overall winner, Dexter Lewis. This guy was impressive. Now, as I said earlier, a little bit light on the numbers as far as the bodybuilders go, but from a quality standpoint, this guy could have won that Europa 212. I mean, he is legit. He is legit. I saw Dexter. I emceed Flex Lewis's show down in Murfreesboro, Tennessee in October, and Dexter won the overall there. And I can tell you, just from October to now, he's made some incredible progress. Don't get me wrong, he was big when I saw him in October. But here's a guy that's coming like full steam ahead. Just a really dense chest, arms. His legs could probably come up a little bit. But he has good quads, and as you see by this most muscular, I have no doubts that he could have been in that first call out, even in the discussion for a win at the Europa 212 this last weekend. So Jim Mannion talked to him backstage after the show, says tighten up a little bit, come to the USA's and see what you can't do. So he was a light heavyweight too. So he's under 198 pounds. So as far as the 212 division, he's got room to grow into that division. So a good win for him. I don't really want to dog on a lot of the guys at Junior Nationals, but as far as like notables, it was a light super. We didn't see a lot of supers. A couple of heavyweights that looked pretty good, but no Phil Heaths or Brandon Currys or Evan Centopanis that jumped out as the next big thing. But Dexter definitely, he definitely wowed the crowd, and I think it was an easy overall win for him. Talking about another overall winner, Brett Wilkin, your classic physique overall winner. This dude was absolutely shredded. Now, I don't know that Brett necessarily had the most aesthetic physique out of any of the classic guys there. We probably, we probably saw a few guys with a little bit smaller waists, maybe a little bit crazier V-taper, but Brett might have had the best conditioning at the entire show, hands down. In these pictures, I'm telling you guys, you can see by these pictures that he was shredded, but when you saw him in person, it was unbelievable. Just paper-thin skin. You can see in that side chest. It looks like his obliques and his serratus were wrapped in cellophane. And, he put in the work. And I'm telling you what, a lot of muscle. John Meadows was talking about him today on Instagram saying, maybe you can go into the 212. He would have some muscle to put on to go into the 212. But, we talk so much about these guys not bringing the conditioning or the density or the graininess. And Brett was absolutely peeled. And, granted, he was in classic physique, and so he had those spandex shorts on. But I would bet my house that if Brett had regular posing trunks on, those glutes are like stupid striated. So a really good win for Brett Wilkin. I think he got runner up there or top 5 last year. So he's been knocking on the door for a little bit. So probably going to have to work on his shoulder width a little bit, maybe a little bit of quad sweep. But man, like I said, this is one of these guys you had to see in person. I mean, he was walking out and his muscle fibers were twitching and stuff, and it was like, Jesus Christ. And I've seen Brett at a handful of shows. His face was as sunken as anybody's I've ever seen. So Brett really establishing himself, as a good classic physique competitor and somebody that can do well if he continues to bring that kind of conditioning. He won that show on conditioning. So as we had talked about with John earlier, he's going to be expected to repeat that conditioning. The big talk of the weekend, obviously everybody's looking at the bodybuilder numbers versus classic physique. And we only had like 2 middleweights. It was light in the welterweights, not a ton of heavies and supers, but that's kind of standard for junior nationals. But, everybody's talking like, oh, what's going on at junior nationals? And I think what we're seeing is a lot of guys who might be middleweight bodybuilders or welterweight bodybuilders jumping into that classic physique division. I don't know what the discrepancy is between welters and certain heights and stuff like that, but I know what the welterweights and the middleweights and stuff like that, for guys who are between 5'6" and 5'9", those weight classes for classic and bodybuilding start blending together a little bit. And I think what's happening is you're seeing a lot of guys who and I don't want to rip on these guys, okay? I don't. Because I think there's a lot of really good classic physique competitors. But I think there's a lot of guys who are chasing pro cards and not necessarily chasing their goals. And what I mean by that is they're just competing in whatever division they think they can place the highest in. And I think a lot of these guys are jumping into classic thinking, okay, well, I'm not big enough to be a bodybuilder, but I could do good in classic right now, instead of maybe taking the time that it's going to take for them to grow into bodybuilding. And what we're seeing in classic is we're seeing a lot of guys who are really just small bodybuilders who should have no business doing classic physique. So when the classic physique division was first created, I was skeptical because I had been at the Arnold and I had seen classic in at the international level. And having a height in a weight division doesn't necessarily mean somebody's going to have classic structure. I don't know why I do air quotes. Classic structure. You can get guys who are light heavyweights in bodybuilding that are beam pulls straight up and down. And so I was really skeptical. But classic physique at the top national level and at the professional level is absolutely huge right now. You have some of the best physiques in the world: Breon Ansley, Danny Hester, Rosh Rabar, Chris Bumstead, Regan Grimes. I mean, the list goes on and on. Terrence Ruffin, Robert Timms. So I am really, really impressed with classic physique, and it's really cool seeing some of these guys come out with their crazy small waists. But what we're also seeing is a lot of guys, like I said before, who are just small bodybuilders who can't put on enough size to compete well in bodybuilding, so they do classic, which is a little bit frustrating to see. So I think that's why we see numbers down a little bit in bodybuilding and numbers up in classic, is these guys are more concerned about placing well than they are growing into their physique, growing into their structure, taking the time that it takes to develop as a bodybuilder. And so, if you're asking, why the discrepancy in the numbers, I think that's it. Guys are more concerned about placing well than they are about taking the time that it takes to grow into a bodybuilder, the mass that needed for bodybuilding. Now, I will say the conditioning among these classic guys and the men's physique guys as well is better than most of the bodybuilders. So the bodybuilders can't talk a lot of trash because the classic physique guys, as you saw with Brett, and the men's physique guys are smoking the bodybuilders from a conditioning standpoint. But there was nobody at that whole show as shredded as Brett. But again, that's I think that's
I agree.
I think that's that's kind of my take on why numbers were down. So
I heard also in this show that the talk again in the social media world, we saw Lisa Kiesling finally getting her pro card, and for those who don't know her, she's called the classical queen or something like that, and she loves to hold classic posing. You were there. Tell the people what you saw.
Oh man, so I have no idea who this girl is. I've never heard of her before.
What?
I've never heard of her, and I'm all over social media. So we get there, and I saw pictures from prejudging, a couple of pictures from prejudging of this women's physique girl hitting like these classical poses. And by classical poses, I don't mean like poses that we're used to seeing for women's physique. We're talking like classic, like bodybuilder poses. And I only saw a handful of pictures. But when she came out for her posing routine on Saturday night, I'm telling you guys, it was so badass. It wasn't even funny. Here's this girl. Now, granted, she won the classic, or the women's, see, I keep saying classic. She won the women's physique class A. Alyssa Kiesling is her name. And she comes out to this like artsy music. She's hitting like all these Arnold poses. And we've become so accustomed to a certain style of posing in women's physique. The front double bicep where the hands are up and the fingers are spread out. The side chest where, they're kind of twisting their arms. The side triceps, like very feminine poses for the women's physique division. And this girl went like straight Arnold, Lee Labrada, like Ed Corney, Muhammad Mockaway posing. And it was sick. I'm telling you guys, it was so badass. I'm glad that she is a pro now. And, the women's physique division, we have Juliana, we have Shanique Grant, you have some personalities, Danny Reardon. But since DLB left, I don't think there's like a superstar, personality in women's physique. And this girl was, it was captivating to watch her get up and pose. And she's not a big person. And I don't know if it's just because I'm so not used to seeing a female pose the way she did, but it was super entertaining. It was exciting. The crowd absolutely loved her. When they did the overall pose down, she was hitting most musculars and stuff. I think that the IFBB fans are absolutely going to love this girl. I know I did. Chicago did. And if for no other reason for me to go down to junior nationals, other than for the 90 seconds this girl was on stage for her posing routine and the overall, it would have been worth it. She was that good.
I am currently looking for the actual routine because she posted it out there, and she is part of the Liquid Sunrise family, so I gotta plug that in. I saw this great picture, and I'm gonna post it right now, of her. I guess somebody took her to the streets, and she just posted this picture. I saw this picture, and I was like flabbergasted. I could not believe how good this chick looked. And not only that, this is like prejudging happened, and then she went to do this photo shoot, and then I guess she came back. She obviously looked better as time went on.
I'm telling you, man. I haven't seen somebody have that kind of presentation in the women's physique division. I don't know, maybe ever. I really like Dana Lynn Bailey's posing, and she did a great job of presenting her physique. There's some really good posers in the women's physique division, but she's so unique. There's so much personality. And again, it's very reminiscent of these old school classical poses. So it's the posing style that we see, and this is from her Instagram. You guys can watch this a little bit, but one of her friends must have been in the audience taking this video, but you can see her posing style. I mean, front lat spread with the head off to the side. You're crouching most muscular. I mean, look at that. That's some Lee Labrada stuff right there. It was, it was really exciting to see. And, I was, like I said, it was a privilege for me to be there and watch her compete. So a really cool posing routine, and definitely looking forward to seeing her on stage again sooner than later. I hope she keeps going. I hope she doesn't take any time off. She's got to be a little bit leaner than she was there. Conditioning was good separation. She's got to be a little bit leaner. I would love to see her on stage, maybe in Chicago or Tampa or some other show here in 2018. This is a girl that nobody wants to wait to see on stage again. We want to see her on stage sooner or later. So I know she's trained by Ariel Kadar, who I know Ariel pretty well. So I'm going to reach out and tell Ariel, get this girl back on stage ASAP. So, but with that, we had some other winners that we do want to give shout outs to. So, Johnny, we have some pictures of some of our overall winners. Our women's physique overall winner, Alyssa did not win the overall women's physique. We had a woman named Jessica Williams take that overall in the women's physique division. In bikini, we had, there we have Jessica right there. We had another Jessica win the bikini overall, Jessica Telesco. So congratulations to Jess Telesco for taking that bikini overall spot, one of Shane Hughley's girls. So very, very impressive win for her there. In our figure overall, we had Hope Welsh. So a name I wasn't really familiar with going into this show, but that's what Junior Nationals is for. It's a great show for people to establish a name for themselves, and Hope certainly did that in the figure division. In fitness, we had Christy Fenster Avery. I hope I didn't mess that one up, Christy. But not a ton of fitness girls there, but some really fun performances. We had Whitney Jones there, your Arnold Classic fitness champion, working with some of the girls, so that was good. Already went over bodybuilding and classics, so rounding off the weekend, we have our men's physique winner, Anthony Gilkis. So a good competition as far as the men's physique competitors. There was a lot of them, as you can expect from Junior Nationals. But Anthony brought a tiny waist, great conditioning, and as I had spoke before, some of these men's physique guys, conditioning was top notch. So congratulations to all the winners at Junior Nationals. So definitely a good show.
All the pictures you see on this show, the high def, courtesy of the one and only NPC News Online. Shout out to them for doing a great contest coverage and being the real deal. I'm sure people will know this in the future, but I think NPC News Online wanted, to let people know that, I guess contest-wise, they're number one in the world. On top of other bodybuilding related websites. And I guess since they started doing more shows, I guess they planned it to be probably by December. Well, it's the midst of the year, and they, according to their ratings and everything, I got it from good word that they're number one. So props up to them, the best organization in the world, and we fully support the NPC and IFBB Pro League. And shout out to our Puerto Rican bodybuilding champion, Alexis Rivera Rolon, which he's watching. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him, but he looks freaking crazy. And I know he kind of doesn't want to talk, but it's one of those guys that if you hit him hard, he'll talk trash too. So, we're going to talk a little bit about trash talking, but make sure you keep watch on Alexis because he's coming for you guys. He's coming for you. So what happened here with, Jeremy Buendia and Dexter or whatever? Jeremy thinks he saved bodybuilding because thanks to men's physique. We got people like Boston Lloyd saying that Jeremy couldn't win a local show as a bodybuilder, and this whole thing exploded. And then Dexter came over. I didn't mention him, but Dexter came over and did this huge Instagram story on, basically how bodybuilding is our niche and it's our underground sport, and it'll always be, about the mass and the big guys and blah, 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 blah. So, take us back, David, when this whole thing happened out of nowhere. Because I know Sergio got involved, and when Sergio gets involved, it's like prime time entertainment.
Okay, so Jeremy was overseas, somewhere, I don't know if the Philippines, Eastern Asia, and he was doing an interview for, it looked like some sort of local news network, and he had said that, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, bodybuilding was dying and numbers were down, and the men's physique division of bikini really revived the sport. And when I watched the video, I didn't see Jeremy say anywhere specifically that he himself did that. So I did see some people talking about Jeremy said he saved bodybuilding. I didn't see that, but Jeremy did allude to that the sport was dying, and that men's physique and bikini saved the sport. So he was going to get in some hot water with some of the competitors for saying that. It kind of got blown out of proportion. We saw a lot of people respond. Dexter Jackson, as you said, did a very long Instagram story responding. And basically what Dexter said is Dexter spoke the truth, like we would always expect from Dexter. He just said, look, bodybuilding was fine and bodybuilding's doing fine in that, yeah, men's physique. Look, guys, and Dexter pointed this out, and he's absolutely right. There is no denying that since the inception of the men's physique and the bikini divisions, numbers at local shows have grown because those physiques are more attainable. Jeremy talks about it being more mainstream. I don't know if it's necessarily because it's more mainstream and that's why people did it. I think those physiques are more attainable. So I think it's great that the NPC added divisions for people with different fitness goals, or people who maybe can't carry the mass that it takes to be a bodybuilder, or for women who don't want to look like female bodybuilders, who would rather have the bikini look. So I think the addition of men's physique and bikini has been great. And yes, we've seen national shows grow. We've seen local shows grow. But the meat and potatoes, or the meat and bread of this industry, as Dexter alluded to, is always going to be bodybuilding. And that is the truth. Bodybuilding was doing fine, and bodybuilding is doing fine. Now, people talk, oh, juniors, oh, look, bodybuilding's dying. Bodybuilding's this, bodybuilding's that. Look, guys, I remember being at shows in 2000 and 2001, in 1999, local shows where you had 3 guys in one class, 5 guys in one class. And it's like everybody, like, I don't know, they look back in the past with like these blurred like goggles on, thinking that there used to be this heyday where there was these huge numbers. No, bodybuilding shows used to have 40, 50 guys, and that was it. Now if a show has 40, 50 people, people are like, oh my God, what happened? There's only 40, 50 people. But no, so as Dexter had said, bodybuilding is the meat and potatoes of this industry. And Jeremy's right in saying that, yeah, the local shows have grown, and Dexter thanked the people for that because he's a promoter, so he's making more money with the bikini and men's physique. But and Dexter had pointed out something interesting. He said Jeremy has followers, Dexter has fans. And the people that are traveling to the Olympia in droves, that are people that are going out there, Dexter was absolutely right. Those are the fans. Those are the people buying the tickets. Those are the people going to the shows, the hardcore bodybuilding fans. And something else that Dexter said that's absolutely true. If you had bodybuilding, let's say you had men's open and 212 and classic, or let's just say men's open and 212 on one weekend, and you had men's physique on the next weekend, which one do you think is going to have more ticket sales? If you had an expo where it was all your top bodybuilders, Dexter, Phil, Cutler, Ramy, and you had an expo where it was all your bodybuilders, and then you had an expo it was Jeremy, Ryan Terry, some of your men's physique guys, which expo is going to be busier? We know the answer. We know the answer to that already. So again, I'm not going to turn into some huge bashing session on Jeremy because I do think maybe what he was trying to say was taking a little out of context for as much as I enjoyed watching some of the things that were said. But Dexter's absolutely right. The meat and potatoes of the sport is always going to be bodybuilding. And people are like, oh, look at how many more people men's physique has brought. Look, a men's physique Olympia wouldn't stand on its own. It wouldn't. There wouldn't be ticket sales. There wouldn't be people showing up to the expo. I have respect for the men's physique guys. And that's one thing I learned when I started doing contest coverage is how hard these guys are working. And at a lot of shows, the men's physique guys are out conditioning the bodybuilders. And you see that right there. Dude, I'll tell you what, Jeremy Buendia gets shredded. And, whether he's right or wrong with what he said, the kid works his ass off. And so I have a ton of respect for the men's physique competitors because I know as a competitor that the hard part of getting ready for a show is the diet. Look, bros, the squat rack is not as hard as dieting. Dieting is harder. So I have more respect for a men's physique guy that's absolutely peeled to the bone than a big fluffy bodybuilder who didn't get in shape getting on stage. And I've been both, the guy who's totally out of shape, or not totally, but not in competition shape. And I've been pretty lean. And I can tell you, it's hard work getting in shape. And so I respect the men's physique guys. But again, it's not even an argument or a discussion which division holds more weight in the sport. And I don't know if Jeremy's discussion here was about money or the men's physique guys not getting paid like the bodybuilders, but Dexter touched on that too. Hey, the fans are paying those $600, $700, $800 tickets for the VIP seats. People aren't paying that kind of money to go see the men's physique competitors. So some good drama in the sport, but you know, it's nice to have guys going back and forth. It keeps things interesting. It gives us something to talk about. Yeah, some people went pretty hard on Jeremy. You know, he couldn't win a local bodybuilding show, and you know, earlier on in the show, I alluded to guys, you know, going in a division they're going to place better in. You know, and you can't fully blame people for doing that. You know, Jeremy, you know, when Men's Physique came around, obviously thought that was going to be a better fit for him in his structure, and it worked out pretty darn well for the guy. He's, you know, 4-time. Did I just say pretty darn well? God, I'm from Wisconsin. But it worked out pretty well for the guy, for Mr. Olympias. But yeah, so I was glad to see Dexter respond. I think he, you know, but Jeremy, I don't want to say Jeremy fired back, but Jeremy responded, didn't really backpedal a lot. You know, he just kind of said, well, you know, it's more mainstream. The men's physique look is more acceptable. And Dexter was like, it ain't mainstream. We're not on ESPN. You know, I saw bag toss on ESPN this last weekend. I didn't see men's physique. But no, so definitely some good drama. I don't know. What's your take on the whole thing, Johnny?
Yeah, I really, I'm with you on this. One thing I do get about Jeremy, and it's the same thing we kind of alluded to in our last show, was that, you know, Jeremy is not afraid of talking, especially in the press. You know, when we do the press conference in the Olympia, he's not afraid. He comes off like, you know, he's the champ, and he wants to own it, and he wants to prove people wrong. And, you know, I think, you know, if you keep hitting him with certain jabs here and there, he will not stay quiet.
No.
I think he responded to Sergio something about a hashtag, and he, you know, he called him out on the hashtag, and I don't know if he's doing it like real, because again, it's the same thing we talked about in the last show. It kind of seems real, but it's probably not, and that's what keeps, you know, the media keeps the fans talking. And you know, and I know that when we go cover the Olympia, for example, and we see all these, there's fans from all over the world, and there's fans that are really invested in our sport. And then when it gets to that hype, you know, people think, you know, Dexter Jackson still has a line from here to freaking the Strip in Vegas, and there's people that are waiting hours for him. You know, same thing, I guess, for Jeremy, although a different type of like following, I guess.
Sure.
But it makes it interesting, and you know, when you get Sergio involved, it's lights out, you know, because he won't stay quiet either. I personally like it. I don't think personally he went too far. I think it just kind of, like you said, it kind of went out of proportion a little bit. I can respect these guys, like you said, because Jeremy does get in great shape for the Olympia, and sometimes you want to watch like an underdog beat him. And I remember those years with Sadiq, all those fights, Sadiq, Jason Post, and all these guys. And, you know, Jerry came in and he proved people wrong and whatever. You know, he has his own style of posing and stuff. So I don't know. I think, again, he blends into that line of real or not real, and he's not afraid to throw some jabs in there. So we thank these guys for making the sport not boring, like we talked about last week.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it definitely, and I was surprised Dexter came back the way he did, but Dexter's a real no BS guy. Dexter refused to say even Jeremy's name. He's like, I'm not going to say his name. It was hilarious. If you guys haven't seen it, it's probably off his Instagram story. I'm sure somebody saved it, but it was classic Dexter. And Dexter's been one of my favorite bodybuilders for 20 years now. God, I've been a fan for a long ass time. And Dexter is, you know, most wins out of any IFBB pro ever, you know, 5, 6, 20-time Arnold Classic champion when you add up, you know, his international Arnolds. So when Dexter Jackson speaks and drops some knowledge, people listen, and they certainly did here. And he made some really good points. You know, he didn't, you know, throw too many low blows or anything like that at Jeremy. You know, he kind of, he took a few shots, but, you know, nothing overly critical. And so, I thought it was, you know, some good-natured trash talk, and you know, I was happy to see that that at least there was some drama and some stuff going on in the world of bodybuilding for us to talk about. But I don't know. That's we'll see what next week brings. I think that's gonna wrap it up for us for this episode of Inside Out, guys. Let us know what you think. Go to NPC News. Here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to go to NPCNEWSONLINE.com, and I want you to check out all the photo galleries of Alyssa Kiesling. That's like your homework for the week. Go to NPC News Online, and thanks again to JM and Frank and all the guys over at NPC News Online, the photographers Dan Ray, videographers Adam Silver, everybody that busts their butt over there, so we can put some content up. But go to NPC News Online, check out the pictures of Alyssa Kiesling and Alyssa Kiesling. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that she gets back on stage again. But that's going to do it for us, guys, for this episode of Inside Out. I am David Baye, along with my co-host, my man, Johnny Styles, and we will catch you next week.